we chose the topic today because I saw Jane wearing a shirt that said, "Born to be real, not perfect." And I was like, oh, that's perfect. I was looking through pictures because I wanted to maybe choose a different picture for you for this one. And I saw that picture and I was like, that would make a really fun topic. And a lot of people are struggling with that. They feel like they're trying to be authentic, but they don't know how. And they also get caught up in perfectionism. They get caught up in trying to make their lives this perfect version of itself, like almost this mask, like this social media perfection that we're showing everybody else. We're showing people our story. And then they hide what's inside. We want to talk about that. We want to explore how you can be more authentic and how it impacts your life. So welcome to Jane. Thanks for coming on the Soothing Your Unsettled Mind.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you for inviting me along. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jane is a light-hearted life guide. So she's going to help you enjoy life with a lighter heart. She's a certified NLP master practitioner, clarity coach, and her purpose and passion are to support overthinking women to transcend stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. She believes that life is not meant to be a struggle, and when women learn to stop overthinking, it enables them to show up in the world as themselves. We'll be speaking a little bit about that today. How to show up as yourself, how to drop overthinking, and how that can help you be more authentic. And you were sharing with me a little bit about something you've discovered more recently. Tell me more about that insight, Jane.
So the insight is around how when we mold ourselves to be more palatable to other people, they are not seeing the real us. They are not building a relationship with who we truly are. And certainly from my perspective, that led me to experience a little bit of thinking about it. And I had an insight one day that, if I'm not being who I truly am, then the people around me are having a relationship with somebody else, with somebody who's not really me. And I got curious about how that might change. But in actual fact, the change came over a number of years. Because I'd been searching and seeking and looking in the direction of growing from a personal perspective. And so I was questioning things that came up for me, and this was one of them. And I remembered an instance from being a child. I was 8 years old or thereabouts, and I was watching a film, an old black and white film, called The Inn of the Sixth Happiness. It's a very, very old film. And I was watching it with a friend. I don't really know why we were watching it, but anyway, it was on the television. And the ending came, and it was a very emotional ending. Being a very sensitive child, I cried. And my friend laughed at me. Mm. And so I ran out of the room and went off to the bathroom with a belief instantly formed that, you can't do that, Jane. You can't show that emotion because that's going to result in somebody laughing at you and you feeling humiliated. So that was the first kind of recollection of me thinking, oh, now I need to change who I am and how I behave, because of this instance. And of course, we all have our own stories around that. But that's the first one I can remember.
Yeah, it's funny because kids don't have this friction between who they really are and how they express themselves. They just are open and it I was having a conversation in one of my last podcast episodes about that how they are okay with being inconvenient. They're like,
Mm.
I'm fine just being who I am, even if it's inconvenient to another person. And we tend to have maybe an incident or two. For me, it was I was looking at all the cool magazines, and I wanted to be cool, of course. And all of the models in the magazine, they would all scowl and frown and they wouldn't smile. They weren't smiling. And so I thought, okay, well, that must be what's cool is to not smile. You shouldn't smile. So I was just this kid who was very, very serious
Was it
in
the
like
in a moody look?
fourth and fifth grade. Yeah, yeah. And and then I learned, okay, it's okay to smile. I forgot that. That was a fun little
Yeah,
phase. But I
yeah.
think that that can have more impact on us than we really realize. And we carry that with us as a temporary thought, of course, that's rehashed over and over and over again.
Mm,
And then it changes how we approach our world today and how we live our life today.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. It becomes outdated and we don't realize. Yeah.
It was borrowed and outdated from the start. We just didn't know.
Mm,
It wasn't even ours.
no. And it didn't mean the thing that we thought it meant. It was just
Mm.
an in the moment experience.
Yeah.
And at 8, I didn't have the executive functioning to kind of rationalize that. Um, but as an adult, then obviously we see things differently, or we have the opportunity
Mm.
to see things differently and to learn how our experience works and how that it's not natural to have a very busy, unsettled mind. That's not our natural state.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that we as adults can then go on the opposite side of it, where we over rationalize. We want to be rational, and then we're blocking that just that experience in the moment through that.
Yeah, I maybe used the term that, yeah, yes, because if we're thinking rationally, then we are in the thinking mind where we are not being free flowing creativity and in the moment. Absolutely. Um, and I think that's something that's really changed for me over the years is that being able to embrace the current thinking and feeling
Mm.
as just that, as current thinking and feeling, and not something that's fixed for any length of time. And bringing that back to this idea of perfectionism and being real. I wrote down when you said about perfectionism, and we've got the show reel, the social media lifestyle, and I think that a lot of people fall into the trap of trying to make everything perfect and positive.
Mm.
So we have an unsettled mind, and then we set out on a quest to make that settled by making everything in there positive, which is futile and impossible.
Mm.
And life is real. We are human beings having an experience, and it's only right and proper that we experience it all. My meditation teacher has a way of phrasing it, and he says, life is happening on a spectrum of possibilities from moment to moment to moment.
Mm.
And our only job in this life is to experience it all and not try and make it positive, not try and make it anything that it isn't, but to experience it as it is and own it. That's my experience.
Well, even like positive and negative are concepts. Like maybe we can kind of feel them a little bit, like there are thoughts that don't feel as good that you might label as negative, and thoughts that feel better that you might label as positive. And so then the game becomes push away the negative thoughts and then give me more of the positive thoughts, and then that game becomes maybe even to the point where like we can't do that internally, and so we try and do that externally.
Mm.
Like we realize that, okay, I'm just going to have these negative thoughts in my head, but nobody else needs to know about it. And that really happened for a lot of families, I think. I think that there's a lot of families who, oh, we don't talk about that, who had the taboo subjects
Mm.
that they would ignore. And ignoring things actually gives them energy in your mind. And so I think we can do that. We try to ignore it, and it gives that energy. And then we're like, well, if I can't control that, I might as well control my external, what
Mm.
everybody else sees. I might as well wear a mask of positivity. And then there's this wider and wider gap between who we really are and how we really feel and what we're presenting to the world. That
Yeah.
perfectionism.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we are getting better at talking about things and being open about these things. But again, that was something when I started talking to my husband about, my how I'd actually felt and the thinking that I'd had. For a good number of years, he was shocked because I'd never shared it with him because to me it was a taboo subject, or I thought it was taboo. And what would he think? Because where did that come from? This kind of thinking. It was just, I just didn't want to share it with him. That was the thinking I was in at the time. And then I recognized, well, actually, that was my experience, and that's okay. So I've done a little bit of it's like I've emerged from a bit of a shell. And it's very liberating when you can do that. And there was one occasion, I can't go into the whole story because it's quite a long story, but there was something that I was looking forward to a great deal. And it was the delivery of something. And my husband knew it was being delivered. And whilst I was out, the delivery came. He misread a message and he opened the delivery. Now, the whole point of this delivery was going to be me opening this delivery because it was very special. So I got home and unbeknownst to me, he'd opened it. So I'd not read any of these messages that would have given me a clue. I walked in the door and he confessed that he'd opened this thing. And it was a very strange moment because I felt angry because I had this thinking about, well, that was my thing to open. And so the anger came up in me and the anger came out. Now I wasn't horrible to him, but it was obvious that I had this thinking and feeling going on about, just a parcel to open. What were you thinking of? But it lasted. It was like, oh yeah, I'm angry. Oh well, let me open it anyway, because he packaged it all back up, bless him. But it was like, oh well, I've been angry and now I can be excited. So it was just, when you talked about that freedom of children to just be in the moment, it was that kind of moment. It was like 1 second I was angry, the next second I wasn't anymore. And so, stuff happens and we can experience the emotion and allow it to do that thing where it works its way through our body. It's a, energy in motion. It moves. And if we allow the next thing to come in, then we can be free to experience that as well. So yeah, that was the first time I noticed that was a thing that I could experience anger, not, you should never feel anger or, whatever. I could feel anger and then be okay a few minutes later, which was a big revelation for me. But so often people try and suppress their emotions because they think they're taboo. And I recently heard or read about a webinar that Bill Pettit had done. And Bill Pettit is an American board psychotherapist who is a three principles practitioner. And he was saying that he drove along the road this particular day, got to a junction, and the lights went to red, so he stopped his car, and there were lots of people crossing. And the thought popped into his head, oh, I could put my foot on the accelerator and mow all these people down. And then he got on with his day. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because maybe if I was a board level psychotherapist, then and I didn't know about this stuff, I might think, oh, what's that kind of thinking? I can't think that if I'm a board level psychotherapist. People will, blah, 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 make it mean something when it's a random thought that pops in as if by magic. And then it just pops back out again without us having breathed life into it and given it life. So yeah, I seem to have gone off on a tangent there, Rich.
No, I love that. And I'll often talk with clients about the nature of thought, that it's kind of like a magic hat but you never know what you're gonna get. Like you just kind of say, oh, here we go, and it's a random thought about this, and it's not like you can make yourself have thoughts. Sometimes they just pop out of the magic hat. And there are infinite possibilities, like you were talking about earlier. Anything could pop through in any moment. And just because something pops through doesn't mean that you have to go with it. Doesn't mean that you have to make your whole act up around it. It'll disappear. That's the nature of this, is that it's not going to stay and hang around, even though we might tell ourselves a story that it's doing that and has done that for 20 years or 50 years or however many. if we understand that, we're not going to take it as seriously, and it becomes a lot more easeful.
Mm.
Life becomes in that flow of experience more, like you were talking about. And whatever comes through is allowed. Doesn't mean that you're going to go out and berate someone if you feel angry. But there's famous stories about Zen teachers who are enlightened who get angry and kind of throw like a mini tantrum, and then they're over it in 5 minutes. There's something that I tell my clients often is that there was this scientist who studied the brain and emotions, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. And she said that when you have a thought, you will have an emotion, and she measured how long the emotion would last. It's 90 seconds,
Yeah.
a minute and a half. That's it. And we're have this experience of emotion lasting a lot longer than that. And that's because we recycle the thoughts or we hold on to them. It seems consistent, even though it really isn't. We have thoughts about it being consistent that tell us this has been here forever. I feel like this all of the time. Do you really?
Mm.
Let's look and see. Let's see if that's a story that your brain has been telling you for the past 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. And we tell ourselves we've had a really bad day. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Oh, we've had a terrible day. And it's like a minute. And when this thing happened, and that's it. The rest of the day was actually great. But yeah. I was reading something today actually about the emotions thing and the 90 second um it lingering around. And there was another paper done that said, some emotions, it would appear linger longer, but that is linked to how much we ruminate on them. So it comes back to that we give we give that thought life and start to pile another thought on top of the thought and another thought on top of the thought about the thought and another thought on top of the thought about the thought about the thought. And that's why they hang around. And I love sharing with clients the oh well, the kind of internal shrug and the oh well,
Mm.
when something pops up rather than jump into the overthinking cycle or resistance cycle or it should be perfect cycle or whatever it is. Just an inner, oh well, kind of shrug. And it's that can be quite liberating. Um, because I think unless if we've not seen it, if we've spent our lifetime not really noticing this thing called thought and how emotions are linked and how it comes in and goes out and how it doesn't really mean what we think it means, then it's just so easy for us to stay on the same old track. It's like the building the neural pathways, the new neural pathways. So I like to share little things like that. Like you said, you say, oh, let's have a look at this. It's been around forever. Let's just have a look. And it's just that chink of getting curious about, there's something in that. Um, something in it for us to go and explore and get curious about.
Yeah, I think that we can try and figure out the emotions like you were talking about, and that figuring out of the emotions tends to fuel them. And so there's people might hear, oh, emotion comes from thought. And then they're like, okay, they're examining thoughts. And I think that there's a place beyond that where it's just like there's a feeling state, and that the emotion and the feeling are just one expression. One is in the mind, one is in the body. And there's not really a rhyme or reason necessarily, and maybe there is, but I think it's helpful to back off from that a little bit,
Mm,
because your analytical mind is trying to just piece it together and put it in a puzzle that makes sense. When you kind of back off of that and just say, okay, this is here now, the sufferings, it dies down a lot,
mm,
because the suffering is in the story of it. It's in the figuring it out. It's in the pushing it away. It's in the getting more of a different emotion or trying to find something else. It's in the friction of a mind that is seeking peace. No, of course it's seeking peace. But it's just so interesting that when we back off of that, a lot of the pain of it dies down. Recently, I've been grieving my mother-in-law, and I kind of experimented with this a little bit, where I was very sad and I cried, but I didn't have a story about it. I was just
mm.
like, oh, okay, there's some emotion. There's some emotion here. And could it be because of my mother-in-law? Maybe, maybe not. Does it really matter? And I just felt it and experienced it, and it was just not hard.
Yeah,
It wasn't scary. And that's a lot of that fear drives the power of the emotion.
mm, yeah,
We have somebody who popped in. Divyesh, welcome. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, how are you? Sorry about the delay coming in here.
No
Uh,
worries. Yeah, you might have needed to sleep in, it sounds like.
well, it's 6 a.m. right now in Sydney. Hi, hello, it's Jane.
hello,
Hello.
Divyesh. Hi.
Hi, and well, I love your sessions. And I mean, Rich, but I don't think I've heard you, Jane, before. So, are you in England?
I am indeed. Yes, so I'm
Okay.
at the other end of the day from you.
All right. Rich is even further away from the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't, sorry, I might be repeating what you guys have just said, but I love your topics in particularly dealing with the non-wisdom or like unsettled mind or spiritual richer topics.
Mm.
So, because I mean, I get drawn to that because sometimes a lot of my attention goes towards that rather than in the 3 principles. You know, a lot of people wisdom or divine intelligence and all that. And somehow I talked it out with Rich in the last session a little bit, but that hook into the unsettling rather than sort of focus into the unsettled bit rather than trust or experience the presence of the settled bit. You know what I mean? Like these, like your attempt. It's a habitual thing. I don't know, whatever it is, but the hook is on. Why am I this? Or why am I fearful? Or what is this worry about? Or if this worry is finished, let's move on to the next one. And like a pattern, habitual thought, I guess.
Yeah.
But I like your title, Unsettled. Was there any insights you guys talked about which I missed today? Or
Well, it's interesting, Divyash, because we were just talking about that, about how, if we spent a lifetime, and we are wired, our brains are wired to protect us. And from that perspective, we are skewed. This is my understanding. We are skewed towards what we would label as the negative, because that's to keep us safe. We need to be on the lookout for things that are, going to cause us harm. But if we've spent a lifetime of doing that and not broken the habit, and I think it is habitual thinking, then we continue to be drawn into the unsettled part of the mind rather than experience the peace which we all say we want. So we were just talking a little bit around that. But it sounds like you've done some exploration of the three principles, and certainly from my perspective, when I started on the journey of three principles, I just felt like I was missing something, and that a lot of the people in the community obviously had something that I didn't, because I couldn't see what they saw. And I spent a long time trying to get to this quiet place where all these people were just very quiet and still. And that's not how my brain works. My brain tends to be very busy. And then for me, one day it just hit me that actually it's not something for me to see. It's not something that's separate to me. It's here, it's now, this is it. Whatever I am doing, whatever I am saying is the three principles at play. That is it. So yeah, I kind of we have a saying in the UK, I don't know whether you've heard of it, but I threw the baby out with the bathwater. So whereas I'd done other bits of training, it was like, oh no, I can't do those anymore now because I've got the three principles. I don't need any of that other stuff. And then I've gradually come to realize that whatever makes sense in the moment that's coming through my system it's okay. And just acknowledging that has helped me to settle. It has helped my mind to settle a lot more. So I would just say keep looking, keep exploring. And you've already got it,
Thank you, Jane. I came into the principles about 2019 or 8. I've forgotten, just before the pandemic thing, or because of the overthinking, rumination, and because I can still go on about because it's still there, it's not gone anywhere. But Nicola Bird in England used to have, I don't know why I was led to Nicola Bird, but I was.
Yeah,
and then
a little peace of mind.
Yep. And then through her, because of her conversations with Aaron and Leela Turner, and then through that, you get introduced to this wonderful milieus of people, including Rich recently. I mean, I'm so glad. And and so many different subgroups, and I found a belonging and connection and all that. And in that, of course, the feeling is one of settled when you're with conversations or when you're there, or the high after the conversations. And just recently, because I attend because of the timing for Australia, but Judy Sedgman and Chris Heath have have a lovely program, like a chit chat every Thursday in US time, but it lands here Friday mornings. And I think Judy used the word, I think you get the contact high. And I go, what the hell is a contact high? And I realized she might be, I didn't ask her, but referring to a coping mechanism with this lovely conversations. And then Chris said, ultimately, it's a matter of your insight, which will give you a more expansive space or wisdom to see this infatuation with personal thinking for what it is. And I love it. Like even with Rachel last time, he just hit at the right spot. And then I found myself ruminating. Let me catch on. What did she say? Like the thought comes in as soon as. But the good news is, where I was, if I look in hindsight, hopefully with a bit of clarity, where I was when I came in versus where I am now. And again, I needed a validation from somebody else who noticed, not my own head. It doesn't allow. But somebody else said, you've slowed down. I think it was, it's either Mavis Khan or Christine or Judy, because they're my regulars per week. And it's just wonderful. But they all say it's your own insight. You will see. And like you said, you can have all the thinking, but that doesn't mean, it's got anything to do with reality. I can say that now. I go in the shower and stare at the wall and think away.
But how wonderful that you can do that. The thinking is a gift, isn't it?
It is. It's just that it takes over in forms. There is a resist. I mean, I think what we talked about habitual thinking, and one of the ones which seems to come alive is as soon as a feeling of discomfort or agitation or potential worry comes in, I enter into my head immediately to sort it out in my head, right? And that is a habit and a resistance to being present here now. So it's a habit. It's just come to clarity in this last few months. I do that all the time. It's a good thing. Any clarity and calm and presence. And I guess once you come to realize the possibility of joy and flourishing in your faculties and capabilities in the present it's a possibility, it's a hope. And I guess it's just that nothing seems to work according to my own head's idea of how it should be working. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that when your head says that, it's just another thought.
Yeah.
It's another story that you've created and held on to and believed, and that's fine. It will happen. And you'll have a different thought maybe later, maybe not.
Yeah. And also, just tiny realizations about that fear is a thought also. Like, it's sort of like a concoction of something which just hasn't happened. It's stories and imaginations and habitual turning what could be a curious wonder and imagination to a catastrophic laden imagination, like habitual thinking. Yeah.
It's all thought.
Ultimately,
which is not
simple.
I know that's not helpful, Divyesh. I know that's not helpful. But when we get curious about that, so I trained with a meditation teacher as well, and he said there is no such thing as a present moment thought. There is no such thing as a present moment thought, which kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Hmm. What I'm getting, what would he have meant according to your understanding?
So, based on my understanding, it reminds me, I think there's a quote from Byron Katie, which is, since the past is made up and the future is made up, all your thoughts are made of whatever it is. There's something along the lines of, I can't remember the quote exactly. But for me, it means that if I am observing my thinking, if I am being present, if I am being still and quiet, and open to the nature of thought and my experience, then any thought that pops in is either about something that's happened already or something that's going to happen. So it's a bit like a narrative on life. A bit like if you're watching a football match, for example.
Yeah.
They call it a live commentary. But the commentator cannot comment on the game until the game has been played. Until that piece of play has happened, the commentator can't comment on it. So whatever thought pops in, it's not now.
Ooh. Yeah.
And that's how it got me. It was like, oh, yeah, that's interesting.
It's like a response to the moment. But it has to come after if we really pay attention, there is always a little bit of a delay.
Mm.
I love that Amy Johnson talks about how you are lived and then your thinking narrates it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
that you open up the fridge and then you say, I'm hungry. And you already have the fridge open. You already were moving towards food, but then your mind it says, okay, this is happening. And I love, oh my gosh, I love that commentary versus the gameplay idea. And maybe if I can extend that metaphor a little bit, like life, the experience of life is the actual game. The actual players playing and hitting each other, and it happens, and there's points gained and points lost, and but then thought is the commentary, is the person up in the speaker, up in this press box over here, saying, oh, this is happening, and then the player's going over this way, and he's having a really great game today, or, oh man, a really bad game today. Really not doing his best, not filling his full potential. It's just creating a whole bunch of stories. And if you really listen to that commentary, most of the time they're just talking about something that's way out there. It's not even in the field. They're talking about that player's stats or the last game or the next game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So life is the game. And then our mind commentates.
Yeah. I think a lot of mine came from child. I mean, from cultural or whatever. I can go on about the conditioning bit, but it was everything was labeled unconsciously, like good, bad, neutral, good, bad. A lot of black and white with a little space for gray. This is good. This is and a lot of it was my own thinking, which did the labeling rather than the actual situation of it. Right throughout, right throughout life until very recently coming here and seeing the nature of thought, uh, or rather not trying, but glimpses of the gift of thought and the personal thinking coming from this gift. Yeah. Where are you, Jane, in England, if I may ask?
I'm in Yorkshire.
I used to go there for Christmas every time from my boarding school when I was in England.
Did you?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
Ugthorpe, near Whitby, North Yorkshire.
Oh, going to Whitby next month. Yeah, it's a beautiful spot.
And my boarding school was Rugby,
Yeah, all right.
in Warwickshire.
Yeah.
I lived in England more than 15 years. I mean, I was born in Kenya, in East Africa. But yeah, so my best friend lived there, and then they moved to Teesside, Stockton, Darlington, Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
And used to go to Huddersfield and Harrogate and Leeds and
Yeah, not far from
other.
me. I'm in
Yeah.
Bradford, so next door to Leeds.
Oh yeah. And sorry, but what was just last thing about conversation. When I did work in England after living in New York for 10 years, I part of my job was not job, family business, ethnic foods and frozen and all that was trips to Bradford because it dealt with all the Indian and Pakistani with their cash and carries and all that. So
Yeah.
familiar with your area, Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How lovely is that? A connection from all the way over the other side of the world.
That's a beauty. One thing about this conversation, like Richard's created one here, or all the was I come from the thought or perception held of not belonging, not connected in my own head. And in these conversations, without putting a label, it's a lovely feeling of which connects with the goodness or the warmth or the joy of life. That's, if nothing else, I mean, there is a million things else because there's infinite levels of consciousness, but the feeling which can aware of, even though it's hidden, and these conversations make the feeling palpable. That's a good word, palpable.
And isn't it interesting that actually we're connected to that all the time? It never ever goes anywhere.
Yeah,
and the only thing that gets in the way of us being connected to that is what's going on in here. All the busy thoughts that create that sense of separation.
I like that word that you use, palpable. That it's something that you can feel, something that you can almost feel into. And that I love that Jane pointed out that, oh, it's always there. We're just feeling something else. We're feeling our thinking. And I had a further thought. I'm still on that metaphor, Jane. I love that metaphor. My gosh, I'm just gonna
just run with it.
I am literally, yeah, like run with it. And he's going for a touchdown. 50, 40. No, I just feel like, it's okay to have the commentator. And it's just interesting that if you can kind of give energy to one or energy to the other, and you can give energy to the playing of game and the game of life. You're in the game of life, and that feels good. That gives you that good feeling that Divyesh was discussing, that palpable feeling. And then when you're more energized in the commentary of it, then that's a different feeling. It's a feeling that's maybe stress or upset or anger or whatever it is, or really it's just contraction. That's what
Mm.
it is. That's showing up in lots of different ways. And you can feel your way into this way, and then that can direct you back towards the game of life. And when you're in that, it's okay for the commentary to come and go, and they can talk about it all day. You're just playing the game.
Can I say something?
Please.
Mm.
If you become the commentator, you're not playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
You're not on the pitch anymore. You're in the commentary box.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just described me in many ways. It's a bit like, to put it in a very more simple terms. We have Woolies here, like you used to have in England, Woolworths,
All right,
grocery
yeah.
supermarket. So you'd go and simultaneously, almost like you're putting on your coat to go to the supermarket. My mind is going, Divyesh is putting on his coat going to the supermarket. So the commentary is almost like live. It's even way, like Rich is saying, it's almost like simultaneous. The thought it's funny. I just, it's sort of like it's trying to I'm using the word it's my attention on it. It's like trying to remove the experience very subtly. You see, I don't know whether I'm making any sense. I remember going on a trip to Krakow, which is in Poland, and I went to Auschwitz, which is nearby. Now, I've been a studier of Holocaust and all that history and the psyche because I love human psyche, Carl Jung and Eric Fromm and all that. And while visiting the horrendous camp, I had a commentary going in my head because I knew knowledge. I'm not talking wisdom necessarily. I knew so much about it that it was like a blasé trip because it was like you're watching in real life the horror of some camp. But the knowledge dumbed the experience, deadened the experience because the head had taken over. Yes, yep, yeah, okay. Tick, tick, tick. This was the commandant. Or, like it removed the experience totally of just being there. I mean, this is what came to mind just now.
It's interesting because I had a very different experience. I went when I was a teenager, probably before I had all of this knowledge. And maybe this was thought created too. It's just a place, it's just a place.
Mm-hmm.
But I could feel the echoes of something powerful. So I didn't have the commentary. And that let me experience it maybe more fully. Maybe we're always experiencing fully, but are we experiencing our thoughts or are we experiencing the place,
Yes.
where we are? Jane, I want to give you the opportunity to say anything further that you feel like was left unsaid, or to recap something that you feel like was very important that you would like the listeners to take away from this session today.
I think it was something that was just coming up from the conversation we were just having, which is wherever you're at right now, it's okay. That there are infinite levels of consciousness, and in any moment we are where we are at whichever level we're at, and at any other moment that level can change. And that being who you are from a place of love and honesty and openness is a gift that you can give to the world. And do that. Do whatever it takes to be able to do more of that. Yeah. Thank you, Rich.
One,
Yeah.
I so appreciate having you on the Soothing the Unsettled Mind community group. Where can people find you if they would like to reach out to you?
So I am very present on my profile on Facebook. So that's Jane Gray. I have a business page, This Lighthearted Life, and I have a group for women that's also called This Lighthearted Life. So yes, please connect, and yeah, it'd be lovely to hear what you thought of the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, both Jane and Rich. Thanks.
Lovely to be here with you, Divyesh, as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. We love to be in this place. It's funny because I always find that like I go over in my conversations and my coaching sessions because by the end of it I'm in this beautiful feeling like you talked about. It's palpable to me in the moment. And I just want to bask in it. I just want to just like marinate a little bit more. So I'll take this into the rest of the day, and may you as well.
I think I will definitely. And the little dog here is giving additional cuddles, so we are all set, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Divyesh. Bye-bye.
Bye.